Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy Mike C-Roc. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you following and hanging with me and my guests. Thank you for the support of the What Are You Made Of movement and Rocket Fuel. So let's get right into it. Today's guest, Ben Baker, is an international speaker and author, contributing both to magazines and other people's books over the last number of years. His book, Powerful Personal Brands, A Hands-On Guide to Understanding Yours, was released August 1st, 2018. And we'll get into how you can get a copy of that as well. He's also a husband and father and a member of his community, a big believer that friends and family are paramount. And we all have a responsibility to roll up our sleeves and help change our little part of the world. Ben, welcome to the What Are You Made Of podcast.
Mike, it's a pleasure. I mean, we've been talking about this for months now. So I've been anticipating this. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Love it, man. Thanks for joining us. And, we always start the show with the question, what are you made of?
What am I made of? A little bit of rocket fuel, a little bit of tequila, and you know what? There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes along with it. But what makes me who I am is my wholehearted desire to help people communicate more effectively, is to help build better leaders, to help people to stop being managers, to stop managing people and start leading people, to get them to understand how to create better leaders and create better teams and allow for purpose and culture and vision to perpetuate through a company. So that's really what I'm all about. I've been marketing and communication for over a quarter century now. And for me, it's all about elevating the message. It's all about getting people to understand what makes you valuable and why, and enabling you to tell it in a way that differentiates you in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, that's I feel I'm in alignment with you. And that what it says above your head, if for those watching, what's your story? Is I'll take you back a few years when I was in college and I was chasing some of the ladies. My pickup
I
line
think
was,
we all have a degree in that, don't we?
yeah. My pickup line was, "What's your story?" And then they would say, "What do you mean by that?" And I'd say, "Well, everybody's got a story. What's your story?" And get them to talk about themselves. Then they love that. People love talking about themselves, and you don't even have to say anything about yourself. And then they end up leaving and still liking you for some reason. So because you let them talk about themselves. So I love that. Can you share your thoughts on, and I'm going to dig a little more deeper into what you're made of, but I want you to share your thoughts on why more people don't share their story. And I have my things I talk about all the time, but I'd love to hear your point of view on that.
I think because most people, and I hate to say it, don't think that their story is important. And here's the thing. Everybody's story is important. It may not be world changing. It may not be earth shattering. It may not be presidential material, but everybody's story is important to somebody. And we all have people that we influence. We all have people that are going to know, like, and trust us. And they're going to know, like, and trust us because they believe in us. And how they believe in us is knowing our story, knowing what we're about, knowing what we're passionate about, knowing what we believe in, what we rail against, and what we fight for. And I think that when people don't tell their story, they're really not being true to their audience. They're not being authentic with their audience because, you don't have to tell everybody. You don't have to tell everybody you were beaten as a child. But you know what? The fact that you were beaten as a child may make you who you are today, may give people a little bit more insight as to how you've thrived and survived beyond that, and why you're so passionate about child advocacy today. So it's those little stories that enable people to have a hint into your soul and be able to make you far more relatable.
So let's get into yours.
Yeah. My story goes back. I mean, it all depends if you want to talk professionally or if you want to talk personally. 25 years ago, I was in an airplane 200 plus days a year. I was working for a company called Ingram Micro. I had $100 million client, and flight crews knew me by name. I would literally wake up in the morning and have no idea what city I was in or exactly who I was supposed to be meeting with until I opened up my laptop and tried to figure it out. I was known to call down to concierge desk and ask them what city I was in. And my wife and I looked at this and said, you know what? This is a divorce waiting to happen. I'm never home. And when I am, there's, we get into these, these scuffles based on little things, based on the fact that I haven't been home for 35 days. And I took a look at my life and I went, I can't live like this. Either my boss is going to double or triple my salary to pay for my divorce, or I'm getting out. And they were kind enough to buy me out. And the deal was I stuck around for 30 days. I found my replacement. I flew him around for another 30 days and introduced him to everybody. And then I got out and they paid me for 6 months to do so. And that was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. But the best thing that happened to me is they actually paid me to go to an industrial psychologist and do the what do you want to be when you grow up training. Taking the what color's your parachute on steroids and go through an entire couple days of battery of exams and communication and sitting down there and figuring out what are you really passionate about, what do you really want to do with your life. And what it came down to is I love telling people stories. I love helping people tell their stories effectively. And I didn't really know where I was going with this, but I wandered into direct mail, and I fell into it by some happenstance. And I killed a lot of trees. For the first 5 years of my career, I killed a lot of trees. We did a lot of work for casinos and for the grocery industry, a lot of variable print, a lot of that. And what I found out was these organizations were reactive. None of them took the time to understand what their brand was, what differentiated them, what made them leaders in the marketplace. They were just reacting to what everybody else was doing in the marketplace. And I couldn't get them to get out of that mindset. And so I started saying, you know what, this is mission critical. If companies don't understand who they are, what they do, who they do it for, why those people care, and why those people find them valuable, why are we telling the story to begin with? Because you're telling the wrong story. So branding really became a raison d'etre, a reason for being for me. And over the last 20 years, I've branded companies big and small, and I've helped them through taking their brand and helping them tell their story through that brand to be able to differentiate themselves so they stop being commodities and they start being brands worth loving. Well, over the last 5 to 7 years, I've come to the realization that many companies may do a decent job branding themselves and telling their story externally. But if you ask their staff what their brand story is, if you ask their staff what their purpose, what the vision, what the values of the company are, nobody has a clue, and they certainly aren't living them. And it's really moved into internal communication consulting with companies where I sit there and say, let's help you tell your story effectively inside. Let's build your culture. Let's build your purpose of your organization. Let's enable your staff to be better leaders and build better teams and communicate more effectively. And that's really where I've come to it. I've built programs called Podcast Host for Hire, which is really designed to enable companies to create a podcast that interviews strategic partners, employees, customers, vendors, and get a 360-degree view of their company. And we handle that from soup to nuts, all the way from creative through distribution, and we voice the actual podcast for them. And I also do some leadership work, and we actually wrote a book this year with my partner Claire Chandler called Leading Beyond a Crisis, a conversation about what's next. So there's lots of stuff that gets in there, but in the end, it's all about helping people communicate in a way that shows what their differentiation in the marketplace truly is.
Yeah. And it's, part of it's to get more business, build your business. But the other thing is, if you don't have a brand or if you don't have a story, people start to buy off of price and price alone. And, when they, like you said, the commodity situation, that's the analogy there, right? It goes just strictly to price. And when somebody's working with me, they can't get me down the street. And
That
they
is
don't
very
have my
true.
story. They don't have the rocket fuel down the street. They don't have that down the street. So you can go get something cheaper. You can pay less money, but I'm not coming with it. And that's that, because I have that story. So same thing with companies. I agree 100%. The story is imperative. Now, there's still always going to be some people that are transactional people. And you guys should understand that there's probably, I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to guess 10 to 15% of people, the shoppers, buyers, what have you, that are going to be transactional no matter what you do.
Hmm.
That's okay. You just need to understand that not everybody's going to buy in, but the majority of people, they buy the story, they buy the brand, they buy you, and that's powerful. So Ben, let's go back into your life as a little kid and tell us a little bit about personal and what you're made of.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Minneapolis and moved to Vancouver in Canada in 1974. What happened was my mother was from Winnipeg, and my dad was living in Minneapolis when he met my mother, and was originally from Chicago. Well, my aunt and her husband moved out to Vancouver. My mom wanted to be near her sister. So at the time, the Canadian dollar was worth more than the US buck. So we ended up moving to Canada. If not, we probably would have ended up in Seattle. I grew up here. I was in Vancouver till about 1987, went through high school, elementary school. I raced, bicycles at the time. I used to put on about 350 or 400 miles a week and then race on the weekends on a bicycle. I had a great time and learned a lot through that because it was all about teamwork. It was all about communication. It was all about anticipating each other's, needs and moves. And that was a lot of fun. But I went to university in Victoria on the island, and there I really got into computers. My degree is in political science. But my passion, my love was always with computers. I ran the mainframe. I created the first Mac lab on the University of Victoria campus in 1987. I spent a year living in Israel. I took my third year abroad and went to the Hebrew University, came back, finished my degree, went back to Israel for a couple of years and worked in the computer industry, and then came back, oh God, I guess about 94, 95. And that's when I ended up heading up to that company where I was doing 200, where I was working 200 days a year on the road. But my childhood was all about being surrounded by adults. It was my fascination to be around entrepreneurs. My father was an entrepreneur. Most of his friends were an entrepreneur. And where my brother and a lot of his friends would take off and head out, after dinner, I would sit around the dinner table and listen to the conversations and try to learn from people that had been there and had the experience. And I think that that's really made me who I am, because I realized that by understanding business from a business point of view, it enabled me to be exposed to all different sorts of thoughts and realize that, they disagreed, and they disagreed vehemently around the table, but they always respected each other. And, it made me think that there's not just one way of looking at things, that there's always different ways of looking at things. There's always different ways to, look at a problem. There's always different ways to solve a problem. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing that came out of my youth, was those conversations around the dinner table with my dad and his friends, and with relatives, talking about big ideas, whether it be politics, whether it be government, whether it be business, whether it be whatever, and understanding that people can disagree, and neither one of them is right 100%, neither one of them is wrong 100%, but what, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. And I think that
Yeah.
was really what made me who I am.
Love it, man. Love it. So political science, huh?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that with politics now. We don't have to get into your views on politics necessarily, but understanding that part, that both sides have some validity, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And growing up and seeing what you've seen from when you came out of school, political science major, what are your thoughts on how things have gotten so divisive, or has it always been as divisive, and we're just kind of seeing more of it now with media?
You know what? I think that that's a really long, there's a really long answer and there's a really short answer to this. 24/7, 365 news media has done a lot, and social media has done a lot to elevate the temperature, because everybody's looking to fill airspace. And if you've got a TV station, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox, whether it's, pick any of these stations out there, they're constantly trying to fill space. And how do you do that? You keep talking. And by talking, what you're doing is you're perpetuating your viewpoint. And what you do is you're amplifying your message to your, to your audience, and the people who listen to Fox don't listen to CNN, and vice versa, etc. And each one gets, radicalized within the viewpoint based on the media that they listen to. And because they're not talking to each other, and they're not listening to each other, and they're not listening to each other's mediums, they're constantly being fed what they already want. Like, here's a perfect example. I go on YouTube and I listen to a YouTube video that's talking about what's going on in a political world today. All of a sudden, YouTube is going to start feeding me 8 or 10 different YouTube videos that sound exactly the same, that have the same point of view, from the same, the same bet, the same thought process. And then the more you start listening to those, the more comes up your way. So, the algorithms are filled with the reason to give you more of what you already wanted, instead of giving you a diverse viewpoint and letting you listen to different viewpoints. You're only being fed what you already want to listen to. I mean, that's why I like listening to international news. Now, there's a problem, the discord of politicians feeding their base, the politicians feeding their base, and whether it's left or right, it doesn't really matter. There's all the challenges that go along with this, and I could talk about this for hours, but really it comes down to the fact that the civil discourse and the ability to actually talk to each other and listen to each other has been diminished based on the fact that we are not actually face to face, and we are not actually talking to each other, and we're not listening to each other. It's all being done through a medium that's asynchronous.
Yeah, and you know what I like to do? I like to watch. I don't really watch the news for information necessarily. I watch it as entertainment, and I watch
Mm-hmm.
all channels. I'll
Yeah.
watch, MSNBC, Fox, CNN. I'll flip back and forth. I laugh at some people, and I just like to take it all in. But I'm a thinker,
Yeah.
and I think that we have an issue. I think that we have an issue. I know we have an issue that some people go to work, do their job, and when they come home, they don't feel like thinking. They
Mm-hmm.
don't take the extra effort or time to think, and then they allow whatever they've turned on to tell them what to believe. And then they just roll with it. And then so that gives a whole lot of power, obviously, to the media, social media, and the sort, because people are basically allowing themselves to be brainwashed one way or the other, like you're saying. And I think that we need more thinkers. We need to encourage more thinkers, and really, if you develop your core values and really think about what lines with your core values, I think this world would be a better place. But on the other hand, I also think that there's device division needed to have problems to solve.
I am not against conflict.
Hmm.
Conflict is a good thing if conflict is done in a way that's productive, where people actually listen to each other, when people actually debate, when people actually try to empathize and understand each other's opinion. There's nothing wrong with me believing one thing and you believing the other, as long as it's done, and the discourse is done in a simple manner.
Yeah.
That's how the sharing of ideas, and that's how we elevate, whether it's politics, whether it's within the office, whether it's within a marriage, whether it's with your kids. It's being open to the fact that other people have opinions different than yours, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the problem, is that we've reached a point in a lot of cases where people sit there and go, if their opinion is different than mine, it's wrong, and it's not, and it's evil, and it should be obliterated and whatever. And that goes in business, and that goes in politics, that can go in marriage, that can go in anywhere. And I think when we can get rid of that mentality, that if they don't believe what I believe, they're wrong, then I think we're going to live in a much better world.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love it. I think that, people think that if everybody would just go their way, that everything would be hunky dory. But what happens is we end up not having, we don't have problems to solve,
Mm-hmm.
and problems give us purpose. And that's what life's all about, is purpose of problem solving.
Would we
And
have truly gone to the moon if the Russians hadn't beaten us to space?
exactly, competition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, we have a Space Force now. I was looking at that a few months ago, and I was telling somebody about it. And they had not heard about the new arm or the new branch of the military for US is a Space Force. Did you know about
Yeah.
that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And here's the beautiful thing: is the U.S. government does not own the patent on the name Space Force.
Wow.
There is a television show or a movie or something like that that was created years ago, or at least the concept was done years ago, and they trademarked the name. So they've got the
Unreal.
name trademarked for Space Force, and the U.S. government doesn't, which I think is absolutely
That's
hysterical.
unreal. That's unreal. Well, Ben, tell us a story, a little anecdote or something from your past that you still think about every single day when you don't feel like doing something, you don't feel like getting up, you don't feel like, or if your things are going great, it doesn't help you. You're looking to go to the next level. What are you looking back on that fuels you now? Not for regret or not to get stuck in the past, but
Yeah.
something that fuels you constantly.
Here's a story that I tell from stage all the time. And it's interesting because it goes back about 15 or 20 years. And I'm working with a client, and it's a fairly new client, and it has the potential of being a big client. It could be three, it could be four, it could be $500,000 a year in business. They're a significant player in the printing industry. And, we go to do a test job with them, and it's about $15,000 or $20,000. And it was just when printing went from film and plates to direct to print. So it's brand new technology. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm a tech guy. I understand this. I understand this completely. I know everything that can happen. There's nothing that's going to surprise me about this. So we're rushing through this job, and the client sees a mistake on the proof. I said, no problem. Don't worry about it. We'll make a new proof. Boom. Run over to his office with the new proof. And I pointed out to him on this big sheet of paper, and I said, there's the fix. Yeah, we did. Okay, sign off on it, run back to the press, start running it. Well, what I didn't realize is when they made this change, they shifted the print through the entire document. So all the formatting was off, all that, there was kerneling, there was a whole bunch of things, and it looked terrible. It looked absolutely terrible. And being young and brash and willing to dig in my heels as I was, I said, well, you signed off on it. And the client said, okay. And they paid to have it reprinted. And I never heard from them again. And I will never hear from them again. Because their attitude was, you didn't work with us. You didn't take care of us. It was at least 50% my fault. Absolutely, it was 50% my fault. And I missed it. And I think about that every single day. It says, yeah, I won the battle, and it didn't cost me 10 or 15,000 or $5,000 or whatever it would have cost me to reprint it. But I lost the customer, and I lost, upwards of, say, $250,000 or $300,000 for the next 10 or 15 years of business that I could have gotten out of the customer. So that is a story that I tell consistently, and I tell it when I mentor kids. I tell it, within leadership development. I tell it all the time. And it reminds me to sit there and say, you know what? First of all, pay attention to the details. Second of all, take care of people and work with them. When there's a mistake, you work with them to fix it. And you don't sit there and say, well, it's your fault, it's not my problem, because that doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah, that underlying lesson there is 100% responsibility. To the degree you give up responsibility, you give up control.
Yeah.
And so, but I will tell you this though, Ben, I don't think that you lost that customer because of that situation, because I believe that you can always get them back. But that's just something that's ingrained in me, and not everybody's like this. I'm almost unreasonable when it comes to stubbornness.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to look up words, and I talk about this a lot, but the word stubborn, instead of persistence, I like to use because of the lullaby effect. People use persistence all the time, and it goes in one ear and out the other because it's heard so much. So I like to say stubborn, which has a negative connotation most of the time. And stubborn, to me, when I looked up the definition, it really got me because there's two words that are used, and that's perversely unyielding. And
I
I
love
think
that.
that like when you go and prospect for someone, a customer, and you're trying to get business from someone, if you're perversely unyielding, respectfully, obviously, and creatively, obviously, but you stay in the game until they either work with you or they die or you die. Of course, in that case, you're not going to be able to be perversely unyielding anymore. But if you really act that way and live your life and business that way, you can have anything you want in life. And so,
I'll agree with that, but there also has to be the fact that you have to be able to say, I made a mistake.
without a doubt,
I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah,
And how do we move forward together? And at that stage of my life, I wasn't willing to do that.
yep, yep.
And that
Pride, yeah,
you're absolutely right. If I had gone back to the customer and said, you know what, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. Can we split this with you? I might even still be working with that customer today.
yeah.
And,
Or
and I
you got,
agree with you. I agree with
and
you.
and so you got to look at it. It's like you said, things can be looked at several different ways. You shift your perspective and say, you know what, now this turns into an investment on my part, and I got to invest the money, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make sure it's right and tell them, hey, I'm human. I made mistakes, even though they had part in it. Right? It doesn't matter.
Absolutely, they had
And
part
then,
of it.
and then from there, like you're right. I mean, if you would have taken that responsibility and then gone into if they didn't, let's just say they didn't want to work with you after that, but you kept following up anyway. At some point, the timing is going to be just right where they're going to have an issue with somebody else. And if you continue to run your business like you are expected to run your business, which is very high standards, there's no customer that will, quit you for life as long as you keep going after it. So lessons there. I love it, Ben. I mean, the two things that I heard was 100% responsibility and also be stubborn about it as far as going after it more. So, uh, let me get into this with you because I like to ask the guests now that my book Rocket Fuel is coming out February 7th. It's all about converting setbacks and becoming unstoppable. I want to get your thoughts on what that Rocket Fuel concept means to you. And I'm asking all my guests this question now because, I really want to hear the different aspects and different sides of it and how people actually view that concept. So what does Rocket Fuel mean to you?
Well, I think the fact of being unstoppable is this year could probably be, the quintessential, definition of rocket fuel. In March, there was a bunch of us on a Zoom call together, keynote speakers from around the world playing, keynote bingo. And whoever lost every single job that they had for the year first won. I came in second. I had work in Australia, I had work in Europe, I had work in Trinidad and Tobago, through the United States, keynotes for an entire year, gone in 72 hours. And I think it's, you had two choices at that point in time. We all had two choices at that point in time. You can grab your knees and rock back and forth and call for your mommy, or you can sit there and say, okay, what's next? And I think it's the people that sit there and say, okay, now that this has happened, what do we do now? How do we redefine ourselves? How do we sit there and say, these are the skills that we have? How do we sit there and find the people that need, what we can do for them and be able to work with them to be able to thrive through this? Those are the people that survived and succeeded moving forward. The people that just sit there and say, oh my God, keynotes are gone. What am I going to do? Those are the people that are still sitting on their hands. And I think that the rocket fuel is the belief in yourself. It's believing that there will always be another day. There's always a different way of looking at it. There's always a way to, get beyond the trauma and the grief and the frustration and build something new and build something that's exciting. The book that I'm working on right now is called The Glass is Refillable. That's the next book that I'm writing right now. It's called The Glass is Refillable. And I truly believe that we control our own destiny. And the way we can control our own destiny is believing that no matter how bad things get, no matter how challenging things are, no matter how dark things are, there's a way out. And there's a way to move beyond. And I think that those are the people that will always, the ones that are adaptable and the ones that are resilient and the ones that are creative, those are the people that have the true rocket fuel in life.
Love it, man. Yeah. I mean, every problem has a solution. Every problem. And if you believe that, you're unstoppable. Thank you very much for that, Ben. And thank you for joining us today, man. And how can the audience engage with you further and also get in touch with you?
The best way to engage with me is through LinkedIn. You can find me through Your Brand Marketing is probably the best, or just keep me on through Ben Baker. But to find everything and anything about me, go to yourbrandmarketing.com. There is free chapters of my 2 books. There's 3 free ebooks there. There's a link to my podcast. There's links to my podcasting programs, to my leadership development training. Everything is sitting right there in one spot, including how to book me for keynotes. And it's all at yourbrandmarketing.com. That's the central repository for everything.
Love it. Thank you so much, Ben. I appreciate you. I had a blast here today. Thank you for having me on your show too. And I look forward to doing things, some, I don't know what in the future, but definitely working with you because you're my kind of guy, man.
Hey, we'll find some way to make it happen.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast. Please go subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, or whatever you listen to. Also, if you like to watch podcasts, YouTube, Mike C-Roc, Ciorrocco, go subscribe there and you will get dinged every time we put out a new episode, which is twice a week. And I'm going to continue to bring you great guests with great value, great content for your life and business and relationships. Till next time. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to say until next time. Go get that Rocket Fuel book, by the way. MikeCroc.com/book. Mike C-Roc with no K.com/book. Become unstoppable. Until next time, be good.